Hi, and welcome to a Small Medium at Large podcast. I'm your host, Gail Hyson, bringing you intimate interviews beyond normal boundaries. I want to thank all you listeners for subscribing, liking, sharing, and commenting. Thank you to Nancy and Richard for producing and posting this show. And welcome everyone here today. I want to tell you about our special guest here today, Gloria Canning. Gloria is a lifelong experiencer and contactee of multidimensional beings. The effects of such from childhood led her finally on a path of investigation into the nature of reality. Gloria was fully aware that she was not like others as a child, as these experiences, which she did not understand at the time, had a profound effect on her daily interaction and understanding of the world. Talking to spirits, precognition, telekinesis, and remote viewing, to name but a few, were a natural part of her childhood. She expressed her insight of these experiences and interactions through her life choices, researching, art, painting, sculpting, teaching self-inquiry and communications to multidimensional beings. Gloria produced her Open Minds podcast and is now producing the docuseries The Divine Comedy, which is her expression of who we truly are, why we are here, and the nature of reality. Let's welcome Gloria from London here today. Welcome, Gloria.
Hi, Gail. Lovely to see you again.
It's a pleasure to see you again as well. I have a whole lot of questions here for you.
I bet you
And
have.
yes, and I will mention about how we met later in my questions.
Yeah.
And it seems when you sit back, I think I have a little better lighting on you,
Is that
maybe
better
there?
lighting? Am I
Yes,
radiating light for you?
yes.
All
Oh, there you
from
go.
over the
Perfect.
pond.
The
From
minute,
over the pond.
the minute, I think sun must have come through your window or something,
Yeah.
but all of a sudden lit you up. So I have questions. I will ask about our multidimensional beings a little bit down in a few questions later. But
Yeah.
what I want to start with is, and this is a three-part question, but can you elaborate on your childhood and how you were raised, knowing you felt different than other children? And did your parents recognize that you were different? And is there any story from your childhood that you would like to share?
Um, yes, to all. So you're going to have to start at the beginning. Give me the first question first.
Can you elaborate on your childhood and how you were raised, knowing you were different than other children? Did you grow up in the big family, in the city, or what was your surroundings? What
Okay.
was your
I
family?
was I was born in Chelsea, Kensington in London. So I'm an original Londoner initially. Um, since I can recall from very small age, I my childhood was more, it was within the family. There wasn't so much contact outside with anybody else, due to my mother playing the role of, let's just say, a psychopathic child hater. So that was the role she played. So I was secluded and spent, apart from playing around with my elder brother for a while, running the streets of London, as you do as a Londoner, I was very secluded, and I spent a lot of it, I'd say most of the time on my own, most of the time on my own. Um, as you, as I said earlier, it's, I was aware from the beginning. I was no, let me rewind that. I wasn't aware from the beginning that I was different. It was later on, because I was experiencing things that I thought everyone else was experiencing. So um, until to answer another one of your questions, until at some point my mother took me to a psychiatrist because of how I was relating to the reality I was experiencing at the time. But as I said, I had no idea what was going on then. So you're going to have to give me another question. You're giving me like four in one. So
So I was wondering, uh, was it when you went to school that you started to notice that you weren't like other children? And did your parents recognize that you, besides wanting to take you to a psychiatrist, I guess they felt something was amiss?
Oh, they did. Well, she did. It was 24/7, Gail. It was at home, it was outside, it was in the schools. From a very young age, I had this, I did not know they were spirits, what you call the dead. And I would communicate and talk and sort of drift off into a state that my mother thought was maybe a psychotic state. And so I never really fitted in, because what I was experiencing as a young person, it didn't match what was outside on the screen of reality. They were fully aware there was something different about me. I was aware there was something different about me, but I had no idea. And obviously now hindsight's a bitch. So hence why she took me to a psychiatrist who said I had schizophrenia, because I was hallucinating. I was not experiencing and interacting with the social norms of society, because I couldn't relate to them, because I was experiencing something different. I hope that answers your question.
That does. I was wondering if there's any particular story, like if you had either a very positive memory of interacting with, say, a spirit who may still be with you today, or if there were any kinds of, is there a pivotal moment during that childhood when you said, oh, yes, this is how I feel comfortable with these spirits, that I'm more, people would may have called them imaginary playthings or
Yeah.
imaginary.
I always felt comfortable with them. I'd like to add a footnote here. It's only through hindsight. I was not just, at the time I did not know, I was not just experiencing spirit, I was experiencing what you would call greys, very short greys. I actually, in my child's mind, I thought they were dead midgets. That I thought they were just, because they were, I was aware of midgets, small people, and that's what I thought they were. I never had one negative experience. However, when I got towards the teenage years, puberty years, things changed drastically, and the experiences changed as well. And I changed as well. As I spoke before, there was precognition, and I remember even younger than teenage years doing telekinesis and all these things. I started to question in the teenage years, because the experiences, I was more mature, I had a better grip on what was going on. But as a small child, I just couldn't, I didn't know what was going on. It was just happening. So the major impact, I'll give you one experience out of many. About 12, 13 or something around there, I was ironing my school uniform, my clothes for school, and my mother had this horrific wallpaper. Back in the day, the psychedelic wallpaper, just like looking at LSD, it really was. It was that bad. And I was ironing away, and this was one major shift that I knew it was more than just spirit, but I still could not define what it was. And through the wall, everything slowed down. The atmosphere changed, and I watched myself trying to iron. It was like time was slowing down to stop. It was getting slower and slower, and I was aware. And through the wallpaper, come the first big black almond eyes, and eventually 3 come through. And I was aware there was no fear. And then later on, I was sitting on my sofa. And at that point, I'd never seen, when I had what I now know to be the small greys, a lot of the time they had hoods on. They would disguise themselves and call my name. That was really the pivotal point where I went, ooh, that's not a dead person. Or maybe it is, but I didn't quite know. So that was a major change from childhood. And it wasn't long after that, because I do not recall, but I more likely spoke to someone. I've seen another dead person, and they've got big black eyes, and they come through the wall, because you're young. I was an
Right.
innocent. I'd been kept isolated, so I was an innocent.
Mhm.
And that's where it really kicked off.
I I think it's fascinating that you can go back and recall this time and not have any fear surrounding any of that. That's a really wonderful. I would think some other 12-year-olds might be fear and maybe afraid or might be terrified by such an experience, but you had a completely positive reaction to this and
I
no.
was used to it. I was used to, I mean, when you say spirits, I would see them as a child, younger than 12, I would see them just like you see another human being.
Mhm.
There weren't ghosty apparitions, they were real to me. And later on down the line, oh God, about 50 years later, I happened to get hold of a friend. We found each other on Facebook. And I said to her, what was I like as a child? She said, you used to scare us to death, all of us. You said, look at that person. Can you see that man there? And they go, no, we can't see anyone. Who are you talking? So for me, I never even perceived they were ghosts or spirits. It was later on, as my cognitive mindset started to learn more and start to comprehend more, I was like, oh shit, oh no. And it went like that. And the experiences, as this was the first time as a teenager, the full figure coming through the wall. But I was calm, I was peaceful. It was the eyes. I just lock on to the eyes, and that went through the rest of my life, locking on to their eyes. So there was no fear, because I had nothing to fear. It was a natural phenomena for me to experience people, we say dead people, spirits going through walls or things like that. It was my experience, so that's why there was no fear. It was
And
normal.
I think also because it started when you were even young, so young to even describe it,
Yeah,
that it's
familiar.
like a
Yeah,
regular thing to you,
yeah.
nothing to be afraid of.
No, the only
Well,
thing I feared as a child was my mother, not them. That's the one I feared.
I understand. Well, I'm going to go on to my next little section of questions here, which is first, I want to tell our listeners that Gloria and I met on her Open Minds podcast, and I was her guest.
Yeah.
And then this was a little over 2 years ago, a little more than 2 years ago. And then I didn't hear from her for some time. And I really enjoyed our time together on your show, and I couldn't understand where you disappeared to.
Mhm.
And when we just recently reconnected, I understand that 2 years ago you had a medical emergency
Yeah,
or near-death experience,
yeah.
and I was wondering if you could talk about what happened and how it affected your life and your work.
Yes.
Yes, also, I'm very glad you're still with us. Then that's my
Well,
other.
hell yeah. I'm only hanging around just to annoy you, Gail. So,
Okay, good.
I'm just here for you. Yes, as you know, prior to that, I was created Open Mind podcast. I did Inception podcast, and it was all going very well. And then one day I just didn't feel right, and I didn't know what it was. And I thought, maybe I should go and see a doctor. I was aware something was wrong, but I didn't quite know.
And
And
this
I
was
walked into,
2022.
eh?
This
It
was
was about two and
2022.
a half years ago, something
Okay.
like that. And I walked into the doctor's surgery, and next thing I know, they're calling the paramedics, and I was in the back of an ambulance and heart monitors, and they're saying, do you have pains in your chest? No. Give us your next of kin. I go, what are you? I was as happy as Harry, and I was like watching the event go on, and they said you're going to flatline. Your heart rate was gone, blood pressure. It was just. I said I feel fine, and anyway, I was rushed into hospital. I had brain scans. I had heart sorted. I had everything, and it was just increasing. And I remember laying in this bed, and the senior nurse kept saying, all the doctors were there, Gloria, are you getting pains in your chest? And I was going, no, can I have a coffee, please? No, it was like, but I was unaware what they thought the seriousness of it was. So they're all panicking and doing this. I had different consultants, doctors, we don't know, and all these tests were going on. And it was on that night, because I was in for three days. On that night, I was laying in my bed. All my children had been called in because it was serious. You know, I was just about to, for some unknown reason, die. And I had one of my children was holding my hand. I had my hand through the rails. I was in a cot bed, you know, as you do. And I was holding her hand, and I just tilted my head to the side, and I went to close my eyes. I felt like I wanted to sleep. It was really weird, but not normal sleep. And then everything went black. And it was extremely peaceful. But there in front of me were two beings in white. And that's what I recall. And either they said, or someone said, or I said, it is not your time yet. Like, I have to come back. And anyway, so I opened my eyes. I was back in the hospital, but then I closed my eyes again and remember no more. Eventually, they discharged me and just told one of my daughters, we don't know what's caused this, but she could possibly just have a heart attack and die. That was that. They couldn't find, all the bloods were clear, everything, no heart disease, no anything, no brain tumor. It was like that. So I come home, I took a battering. Whatever happened to the physical body took a battering. And it also gave me vertigo. The whole body. I had an infection and they said it was bordering on sepsis. Okay. There was infection in the blood and it was bordering to the sepsis. Maybe that's what caused it, but they were unaware. So I was on all these antibiotics. I was very weak, very poor. I felt like I'd been thrown out of an aeroplane and landed. That's how it felt. So for the first 8 to 10 months, I could do nothing but sit. And I had this vertigo, this spinning. I had no idea what was going on. Anyway, as time passed on, I had another experience. It was by maybe 8 months after it. And I was just sitting and I had this awareness. I actually felt like, seriously, the only analogy I can give you, like I died and come back as somebody else. That's what it felt like, okay? Because I was going, something's different. I knew something had shifted in me. I had no interest in painting. I'm an artist. I paint a sculpt. I had no interest in that at all. And I was just very peaceful. And I couldn't, and I kept going, am I dead? And, you know, I'm like the Sixth Sense. Am I dead? And I don't, it was all that. It was that strange. And then all of a sudden, again, I was in this experience again. And it was loving. That's all I can say, intimate. And a voice spoke with me and said to me, have you lost something? And I went, yeah, I've lost something, but I don't know what I've lost. And the voice spoke again, a very intimate voice, and it's not in the mind, it's in here, and said, it was in a jovial way, keep searching, see if you can find it. And I was well in this communication going, okay, and what have I lost? And this space, this expansion, I was just in it. And like everything disappeared. And then the voice said, are you still looking? I said, yeah, I can't find it. But I don't know what it is, but I know I've lost some. So jokingly, this voice again, go in the garden. Maybe you'll find it out there. By then I was thinking, something's going on. Okay, so I went out into the garden. I sat in the garden. I knew I lost something. You know, when you're trying to remember someone's name and it's on the tip of your tongue and you're searching for, I was like that. So as this was going on, the voice said, have you found it? And then when it said that, this laughter and this joy, this expression come up. I went, I've lost my mind. I've lost my mind, which meant the complete, total ego identity, the beliefs, my passions, every single thing. And then I caught why I was not interested in certain art anymore. Of course, it was joyous. So and then life went back to normal, infection after infection. And about a year or so later, I was able to go out, was holding onto someone's arm. Whatever happened, the experience, the shift was for the physical body to be more prone to staying in the house than going out. So I can't walk too far now. I thought, why has this happened? Why, universe, what are you doing? My role is restricted. There must be a reason. I tried painting, didn't work. No, I painted Jesus, but for some unknown reason, it was oil painting and all. I said, no, that's not it. And then one day, it just happened, and it came in. Do another, because I had made a documentary many years ago when I was working. Do a documentary, and I had this excitement, this passion. Long story short, everything had to fall into place. Everything that was an obstacle that I thought was not an obstacle no more. And then do this play, the Divine Comedy, what we're experiencing. And then off I went. The information came in, every tool came in, the universe brought everything towards me. And then boom, I slowly come back. But like I was different, I'd shifted. And then there was a realization that the whole of my reality had shifted, as if I'd shifted. I know it's a cliche, but like to a new earth, another timeline. I was on another timeline. I was aware of things. However, when I finally re-engaged with social media, I'd been off Facebook, I'd been off podcast. When I re-engaged, I went, what's happened? This wasn't here before. That wasn't happened. Like, I was aware I'd gone through self-inquiry. I was aware people were becoming self-aware before I went into hospital. And everyone hoped that the majority would be self-aware. I was totally aware of that. But now, everywhere I looked was everywhere. The collective had actually woken, and the shift had already happened. It was a different timeline. That, I was like, oh my God. And even connections to people were totally different. So it was like I'd really had gone away and come back. It felt like that. And then this passion because the creative part of consciousness is to create. So eventually, after all the obstacles, I found the cheapest software I could and got this and that. I didn't know what I was going to do, and I just stay in that space I'm in, self-aware, and vroom. And then next, I'm creating art in documentary form, the visuals, the editing, the music. And the funny thing was, I knew I was to speak, to be a voiceover. That's not me, because I didn't like the sound of the voice prior. And I had my daughter here, and I said, what does my voice sound like? Because I've got to speak. I knew I had to speak. Anyway, and I haven't stopped talking ever since. And I have no connection to the voice that's speaking. But prior, I didn't like the tone of my voice. So I've tried to condense a long experience back in. And now I've done the first documentary, I've done the second, I've done a couple more, and I've just released the Egyptian documentary today. It just comes in and I just put it out there. So the shift was humongous. And then within all of that, I had been teaching self-inquiry for years prior to becoming, flatlining. As I come back, it shifted, because I had people coming to me that wanted to communicate with these, what you call ET, multidimensional beings. I never in a million years thought I'd be doing that. And then it just started, boom, working with energy, connecting to frequency. They're having experiences, and it's not mental telepathic communication like we use in the mind when, that sort of remote viewing and things like that. It's heart telepathy. It's a totally different frequency. And all of that. So whatever that event was, it was done obviously in the best interest of to move my path to somewhere. And that's it in a nutshell. It's a lot longer, but in a nutshell. I hope I didn't say too much.
No, not at all. My next two questions, and part of that question, I do ask about that experience. So I'll just ask the next question and you'll see
Yeah,
what
I would go for it. Yeah.
I want to talk about your Divine Comedy docuseries.
Mhm.
And I have watched chapters 1 to 18, and
Mhm.
I know that you produced this entirely yourself. And
Yeah.
for all the listeners, it is amazing.
Thank you.
The graphics, the music, the content are all very incredible. So before I start with my questions about this, could you tell our listeners how they can watch the Divine Comedy?
Once upon a time, long, long ago, there was a great civilization on Earth called humanity. This is a summary of their story. However, the ending is open. You, listening to this story, are the one who will write its ending. We all have a narrative as to who we are, our personal perspective. Every culture has a narrative as to who they are, a collective perspective. These stories shape how we think about ourselves, others, and the world. This then affects how we interact in the world. Each one of us was born and raised in our own personal story of our culture and the social determinants around us. This is all we individually have ever known and experienced, therefore we believe it, and it's our roots of who we are. And our ideas and beliefs are created around this idea we have about us and of the world. So what are these beliefs and ideas that shape our understanding of ourselves, others, and the world? It's time to see this story as just that, a story. It's time to deconstruct this story and look at it objectively. Overall, our stories live under two main influences. One, we exist as separate bodies, randomly here like a fluke of nature, of existence. Or two, we are created by a powerful deity who created us in his image, and he is the ruler of the earth. We must worship and fear this deity. These two stories have shaped the way our cultures, societies, humanity has functioned up to today. These stories that shape how we perceive and shape the world and universe around us gives us another belief, that we are insignificant beings. We are born, we live, then we die. This belief and our story influences our worldview. A collective worldview then comes into play. And our survival, competition, struggles to obtain the basic life needs must be obtained at any cost, even at the expense of others. These stories have created an earth where we fight against opposing beliefs, opposing perspectives and cultures, and we annihilate and deplete the natural world in order to survive. In doing this, we have destroyed a world that naturally sustains us under the illusion that these needs and cravings and survival instincts have to happen for us to survive. Our stories have created a world in which we fight against each other and fight against the natural world under the illusion we need to survive. We have created a world, however, we have also destroyed it. To be free of this destruction, which is the current way of life now, we need to take a look at our current beliefs, ideas about not only ourselves, but what we have and what we are creating here and now on Earth. Ask yourself sincerely, with an open heart, whether our beliefs are serving us. More importantly, whether or not these beliefs are actually true. Yeah, it's on YouTube as well as Rumble, but YouTube is easy. It's Open Minds Podcast. Just put in Open Minds Podcast, and it will come up, the Divine Comedy. Because I've moved away from Inception and all the other ones. I'm just doing this docuseries of documentaries. Yeah, Open Minds Podcast. And yes, I was thinking about it today. You select which one you want to put on.
Okay.
You select it, whatever,
Okay.
whatever your preferences, you select it.
For all of the listeners who are watching on YouTube, and if you're not watching on YouTube and you're listening to us on Spotify or any of the other podcasts, I suggest you check us out on YouTube so you can see the amazing visuals and experience a few minutes of one of these chapters. So my question is, you were talking about this just now, but maybe you could just be a little clearer. Did this feel like, I understand this was different. Was this like a channeling or a download experience? Or as you're saying, the information comes through the heart, not through the head. So I just, you could elaborate on that and then move into explaining to our listeners, what is a multidimensional being?
Okay, no pressure then for me.
No,
okay. No pressure.
No.
Prior to recently, I would have communications with these multidimensional beings. It would happen. And it was more in the external reality, but I would sense the energy and I would get the information. I would just be aware, I know. But I always sensed, sometimes I would physically see, but it was more as if they were supporting me in working with energy, how down this timeline it will be all telepathic communication. So it's a process. So I was used to that. What happens now, it's direct. So whether it's directly them or directly just from my own consciousness, which is connected to them, because we're all one. Sometimes when I'm talking, like I teach in groups and I do one-to-ones. And so I'm aware sometimes I never know what I'm going to say. It just comes, it just happens. But sometimes I'm aware and I go, help me out, guys. How do I capture that? Because to talk about consciousness or to talk about these beings, to find the words. It's all paradoxal. It's complicated. So I tend to use, as you've seen in the documentaries, analogies, always analogies. But now and again, I do feel it, but it's if I'm as one with that frequency. So it's like if me and you speak on the phone, we're at one communicating. It's very much like that as an analogy. And I sit and I wait for the documentaries, how this works with the Divine Comedy. I go, okay, what's next? I have nothing in my mind. The mind is blank. And I just wait patiently. And then a creative idea, and that's how it starts. And then the universe or consciousness puts everything, all the resources in front of me and all the clips I need. I listen to music. I spend a lot of time researching this, and I listen for the tones. It has to be a tone. And that's how the communication is with me, with them. I don't think I've answered all your question, because once I start, I don't stop.
No, that's a very good answer. And I understand much clearer how you're receiving this. So let's tell our listeners who might not have even ever heard of the term multidimensional being, which I have heard a lot lately when speaking to others about this topic. So can you explain to us what is a multidimensional being? And are we all multidimensional beings, or is that a rare thing? Or
from my perspective, remember, each of us are on our own timeline or in our own world with our own experiences, and we have our own definitions, and our social determinants, our cultural preferences will affect the way we express it. So this is just from me. We are multidimensional beings. Firstly, all humanity is a multidimensional being. If it wasn't the case, we would not be able to connect to their frequency. There would be no connection. Like, I'm not being silly, but we don't go and fall in love with a bear, do we? We're not connected to a bear. I don't think I'd want to be either, because I'm just, this analogy is simple. I try to make things as simple as possible. So because I'm aware, when you become self-aware, you're aware that you are consciousness of self, and that is multidimensional, all the creation, all things at all times, all places. Now, everything within the universe is part of you. And when you become experientially aware of that, there is no problem picking up the phone. Okay, there's no problem. Now, as to, I've been asked this question numerous times, what are they like? I can only talk from my personal experience, never talk from someone else's, what I've experienced. But there are a lot more, let's use the terminology, civilizations than humanity is aware of. I'm aware of that. But before I go into that, I want to give another analogy. You know, like here on planet Earth, we have multiple civilizations here and through our history, do we not? We have the Aztecs, we have the Egyptians, we have, and still today, different civilizations. So even though me and you and your lovely audience are aware of it, we haven't experienced it, have we? We've only experienced some, or maybe you have, Gail, because you shoot off everywhere. I haven't. So that's the analogy first to preface what I'm speaking about. So the beings that I have experienced, they are totally self-aware, which means they do not have an idea about themselves, the ego. They do not have belief systems, fears, cultural influences as we do. We have it because we're here to have the human experience. That's the point of it. But they're part of this divine comedy. They're within the play where they come in. So this experience in humanity, consciousness is evolving to awaken to the self. We shift, but we shift along with them. So our connection becomes stronger. So they are the same as us, consciousness. Within inside of you is consciousness. When you were doing your magic years ago, like me, your remote viewing, your psychometry and all that, that was your consciousness, the psychic part. You were going out into the total universe because you can, because you are it. You're not cut off from it. So they are consciousness in a different shape and form. Their reality, what they're experiencing, is nothing like this reality. However, they are aware of this reality. Their laws of physics, their laws of universal laws are different to ours. Okay? But as we are aware of, let's say, ancient Egyptian civilizations, we don't know too much about them, do we? Well, maybe we do now, because the documentary I've just released today, but never mind. But does that make sense? So they are consciousness. They are a multi-dimensional being. They do not mind if you call them ET. It doesn't really matter what you call them aliens. They don't identify with a label. Our labels, your mum gave you the name Gail. Your culture, society educated you, gave you your beliefs. Same as me, over the pond here. However, that's not who we truly are. You especially should know, when you were younger, you were different to the world. You had these psychic abilities that were poo-pooed, not allowed. No, you can't be that. No. So they are fully aware with no ego identity. They are at one with humanity, as in the self, the consciousness. Does that make sense to you?
It makes a lot of sense to me.
Oh, good.
And also it, because I haven't myself grasped what my feelings are about these different things, because so much is coming out right now, whether it's in the news or whether it's people that I have on my podcast or podcasts I've listened to. But there's a lot of talk now coming out that I don't think was 10 years ago was being openly spoken about
No,
like it is now.
it wasn't. It wasn't.
And
It's even for me, sorry to interrupt, Gail, from when I was rushed to hospital, that's the difference I found when I went back onto social media. Things were being, and I was hearing, I mean, I love sciences, so I followed quantum physics all my life, neuroscience, everything. I mean, I was just in it. When I come out of hospital, everywhere I looked, there was a scientist telling me, oh, well, it's all consciousness.
that's what I'm saying
It's
makes the most sense of what you're saying.
Yeah.
I've tried to grasp onto any of it myself. All I can think is that I know that consciousness exists after the body dies.
You
So
know that from mediumship.
yes, so I know that that is happening.
Yeah.
So I can't discount the fact that there could be other worlds or galaxies or planets or places or things where maybe things exist that don't even necessarily have to have full bodies, because they're living in a consciousness space.
Exactly. I mean,
And
quantum
so
physics has actually proved that. Quantum physics has actually proved, not that we need it, the experiential experience we have of multiple dimensions and these multiple dimensional beings, and their reality, quantum physics, quantum entanglement, it is proving it. And I think, and you can see that in the scientists today that used to poo-poo it, that used to say, oh, matter creates consciousness, are now going, no, consciousness creates the matter. It manifests form. That was a massive shift when I returned back, that I'd noticed this world has shifted. So you're actually noticing something's different as well.
And I want to also mention to our listeners that Gloria and I had a little separate little visit together a couple of weeks ago, and we did a little session together because I had an experience myself in my 20s that I never really ever wanted to share or talk about because I was filled with fear over it. And I don't need to bring it up now, but I just want to say that after you and I had that discussion, or whatever we want to call that, we were together.
Yeah.
I have felt completely released from that fear.
Yeah.
And whether the things really happened or whatever it is, that doesn't matter. The fact is that experience I remember now, I'm not feeling any fear about it, even though it was more than, almost 40 years ago.
Yeah.
So I want to say I was very grateful for that little
You're welcome.
interaction that we did discussing these things, because I think some of and I never even knew why I was afraid or what, it was just so unknown and strange to me. I thought this is not something I would ever share with anybody because I don't even know how to express it.
Yeah.
And so I'm grateful that there are people like you that are talking with people like me who maybe have had one experience in their life, but never wanted to again because they were filled with so much fear.
Yes.
So I'm happy to know that these consciousness connective experiences with other multidimensional beings can be a very positive thing.
You're
I'd
welcome.
like to ask now about, there's many things that I was picking up about. I have so many questions from our last 6 episodes that I watched, and I'd like to know about how can you tell our viewers about expanding our sensory perception, and what does that entail?
Expanding your sensory perception. This is where I say, help me out, guys. I try to use analogies to explain something that is really, for the human language, is unexplainable. So let me just say what I mean when I say expand your perception, okay, is like if you have a radio and you like classical music, which I do, and you're tuning in to the frequency, and if you haven't tuned in quite right, it's dropping out and you're not getting the beautiful tones and hearing this beautiful music. But if you keep tuning in, and a bit like spirit mediumship, if you tune in a bit more, you get the full blast of it. So how do you expand your consciousness, your awareness? The majority of the time, there's one way, which is the most simplest way, is to become self-aware first. Because when you become self-aware of who you truly are, when you find out what you're not, and then when you find out what you are, who you truly are, that process in itself starts expanding consciousness within you. It's in a limited little form at the moment with an ego mind, fear-based, controlling. But when you go in and there's little pointers that I give when I teach, to drop the beliefs, drop the ideas how you think things should be. The mask, the comedy, the mask is on, it's playing the game. Then your consciousness, it's like oscillates. Analogies, you tuning in. And when you tune into the self, you automatically expand your consciousness, your perception, because you are the observer. So when you expand your consciousness, it follows you expand your observation, and you become more aware of things that have been in plain sight that you never saw before, because you had thoughts and ideas, or you were told, no, like my mother, you cannot see these, you're schizophrenic, stop it, here's the drugs. So does that answer your question? I try to, in all the documentaries, I do my best to simplify it for my level of understanding, to help people to grasp something that is so complex and paradoxal. When you try to talk about it, it's the only way is analogy. Have I explained that to you, or would you like me to expand?
I think that the fact that you're explaining that the sensory perception expansion comes from within, that you don't have to go out there and
No,
find somebody that's going to do that for
no,
you.
no.
That's the most important part of the
Yeah,
answer to that
yeah,
question.
yeah.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so then I'm going to move on to our next question. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions left.
Don't worry about it.
And then, yes, and we're doing good. We're in our time, I'd like to keep us within a good time range. So I want to find out, what do you mean when you talk about the pulse?
Ah. um, put it into context. What did I say? Remember, half the time I know what you're referring to, but I need the context.
I was listening to it in one of the episodes, and you elaborate on the pulse. And I don't know if it's the pulse of life or the pulse of energy or the pulse of consciousness. I was not sure.
Okay, let me try another analogy. Remember, I'm not a scientist. I state this in the documentary. I'm a layperson trying to articulate experience. If you have an expansion and a retraction, okay? I don't know what you would term it in America, but out and in, okay? So an expansion, retraction. And that is like an analogy for the universe, okay? That is how the universe or consciousness creates. And it's a regulated frequency that is like a pulse, okay? And even within quantum physics, they'll find a repetitiveness, a repetitive frequency, and it's like a pulse. You can identify it, like excuse me, I got hay fever from hell. Like you can identify vortexes through math, black holes through math. It's identified that way. So if you imagine consciousness, as it creates, it expands, it retracts, it expands. But each time it expands more. But it's like a pulse, vroom, vroom, vroom. And within each one of us, and everything that's created by consciousness, even the multidimensional beings, we have like a pulse within, a frequency, which is the core part that then pulses out, comes back, pulses out. Have I made sense? I cannot get it in mathematical terms. So it's the pulse of the universe, or the pulse or the frequency of the God consciousness. It doesn't matter what you call it. It's the heart. It's the heart. Some say it's the heart energy. I say heart telepathy or heart communication. And what does the heart do? It pulses life. The pulse is life. The pulse, you're quite right, the pulse is the creation. How do we create? We're within, we go out and we create and we come back in. We do it every day of our lives, going to work, getting up, doing up. We go out, we go back in. It's the pulse of life, of creation itself.
Well, that's a great answer. And I think the next two questions might connect with it, which is, I have one question about time and I have another question about resonance. So let's just do the time first.
Okay.
And then we'll move into resonance. I loved how you spoke about how time exists. And I was wondering if you could, because I feel the same way as what you said, but I wanted our audience and listeners to hear your description of time not being necessarily how we understand it.
Time is not how we understand it, because here comes confusion.com. It does not exist. Time and space are part of this illusion. So we consciousness can experience separation and other. If we need time and space within the illusion, within the play, so we are able to experience other than ourselves. Does that make sense? But when you go into the self, everyone watching this, you can experiment at home. If you want to come out of time and space, at the beginning, it's maybe momentarily, but it's one way to do it, is when you go within. Now, when you go in through the process, the pointers of self-awareness, when you're within the self, there's no time, there's no space, there's no past, there's no future, there's only now. Everything is now.
Yes.
And everything is experienced within the now. but it's the illusion. It's like a dream, like when you go to bed at night, you're in your bed, analogy, and you go off, but you haven't gone anywhere. You haven't moved from the bed. You're still there, but you've gone off, and all night you're off dreaming, experiencing. So it's the same principle. The analogy is the same. It all happens within here. However, the human experience is to have the perception of time and space. It's playing the game. Does that answer you?
Yes, and I know I've experienced it where sometimes I feel like I can play with time.
Oh, hell yeah.
I can get to a place, even though in this actual space of time, it should take 45 minutes to get there. Somehow I get there in a ridiculous amount of time that does not make any sense. And I'm on time when I should never be on time. I should have been, 30 minutes late or something.
Absolutely.
But somehow I feel like time stops. I get into this thing and I'm just point A and I'm going to point B. And there's no time thing in between, and it just seems to work. And I've just played with it for years and years. It's not something I ever talk about or think about, oh, is this going on? It's just something that I've just played with and thought, this is strange, but it seems to work. And I need to use this sometimes because I won't get there on time if I don't like go into a different time place.
let me give you something here. People ask me, I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm going to try and gift you something here. We've all experienced being in one place and then getting to the other place, which doesn't conform to the natural rules of the powers that be. However, when you're self-aware, you may not be conscious. You, the mind, the ego, will not be aware of it. However, yourself, your consciousness, or call it your soul, whatever you want, is always self-aware behind the scenes. The mask is on. There's Gail playing the role. And every so often, the pulse of creation comes out and goes through the mask. The mind drops, and you will experience being here and then there. But because you're out of the mind, for whatever reason, there's no time-space continuum. I want to be there, you're there. This is how the multi-dimensional beings access us. They do not travel millions of miles per hour, speed of light. They do not do anything like that at all. Just like you experienced. And they're aware of the physics of this reality, this game. Just like you said, Gail, they're there spontaneously. Like quantum entanglement. You've got two particles. So this is, Gail and Gail. So I tickle Gail here, Gail's laughing here. Or Gail to Gloria, say like to me here, Gloria, you're there. Time and space collapse. And that's what many people experience, but have not consciously aware it's happened. But they all talk about, do you know what? I was driving here and I ended up there. God, how did I not have an accident? Because the mind, the idea you have about yourself does not exist. The self, you, the true soul, is in control of this experience. The mind thinks it is, but it's not. That's how that's possible. So that experience is so natural. And this, because we are labeled multidimensional beings just like them, we're having a human experience. We're playing the role of humans. That travel is just like the way they travel. There is no travel. It's now. Everything happens now. Now, boom, you're there. Does that explain?
So yes, it does. I want to just, before I start, I wanted to talk about Dr. Corinne and Egyptian communications.
Oh, yeah.
But before that, I have one question about what the explanation is of multidimensional resonance and the law of resonance. And I believe you used, I thought, a wonderful explanation about a violin, or I thought, oh wow, that's what that anyway. So I was hoping you could share that.
Obviously, when I record these things, it just comes in, so I don't have much memory of what I've said. So just ask me the question again and see where we go with it. Say it again.
About the multidimensional resonance and the law of resonance.
There is a
Well,
law
what
of
is
resonance. The law
Yes.
of resonance is what it's like the fabric of the universe. Everything, consciousness is frequency, same as quantum physics will tell you. And there's like, I use many different analogies. I use the violin for the strings, how the strings go and how it resonates, each note, each tone. There's many different ones you can use. So the law of resonance, from my perception, is the fabric, is consciousness. It's the creation. So before this Divine Comedy was it created? It was created from the fabric of space-time, the fabric of the universe, which is all frequency, oscillating at different areas, and it's a resonance. For example, I mean, people have even now they're aware of the resonance between the planets, the beings, the planets, the resonance of the tones. If you've ever heard that, harmony of the spheres as well. We've got the Fibonacci sequence. All of these things are all things in resonance. There are multiple ones of them, like there's within nature, there's a resonance, with humans, there's a resonance, but there's ultimately the one resonance that connects. It's like a beacon, like an antenna that connects everything to the one. So there's many analogies you can use. You are that resonance. And because you are that resonance, you can resonate frequency-wise to anything within the universe. But most people are unaware that that's who they are. So I do work on the of actually experiencing the energy go through your body. It does take a bit of time, and you start to hear your own frequency. I've always said, if you could hear the frequency of your own physical body, you would be blown away of what you sound like. It's just, I mean, I can't even find words. It's more than divine. It's absolutely a frequency that you literally is home. It's a connection. Have I answered your question?
Yes, because now I first of all, when you describe home, then I know exactly the feeling that you're describing, and I'm understanding that resonance has to do with frequencies,
Yes.
and so that makes a lot of sense
Yeah.
to me.
Everything's about frequency.
Yes, and frequencies also, just like you came back and everything about consciousness and
Yeah. Yeah.
things you were seeing, that's the same thing I'm finding with frequencies. And
Yes.
people are have devices that set different frequencies in your
Yes.
home, and
Yes.
people they're building this new thing I've seen all around where we live in Northern California. People are opening these energy wave centers where people come in to feel the resonance of some sort of vibration that they're creating in there that's supposed to help heal your body of sickness, make you to a more balanced state.
Yeah.
And they all have to do with resonance of frequencies.
Yes, it's all the same. There's so many different frequencies. There's not just, set ones. There are more. And the collective of humanity now is becoming more, this is the big shift. It's becoming more aware and started to integrate their life choices with working with energy and frequency, because you need to harmonize the frequency. Okay, it's like, we all know about harmonizing frequency. It's like, most of us have ex-husbands. Okay, not putting them down, they played their role, but the frequency was there, that then it got discombobulated and it wasn't harmonizing anymore, and you have to go and but that's creation. Consciousness constantly, it does not stagnate, and now consciousness is in this I just say the frequency range, the resonance, the resonance of the whole universe as one. Everything is being magnetized through, a bit like a black hole in quantum physics. Everything that's going around in creation is being drawn towards the resonance, the one. And that's why you're experiencing in your external world these shops that are opening up. How many people I know in the UK, before it wasn't like this. Now everyone's doing sound baths, everyone's doing tuning forks, everyone's doing frequency work.
I just finished a 5-course sound healing
Well,
class.
there you
That
go.
was incredibly fabulous.
And that's the shift. That's what, this is why the resonance, the frequency itself that I speak about in the documentaries, and which the Egyptians were aware of as well. This is why it's so important. So I thought, with the Divine Comedy documentaries, I'm not a scientist, as I state. However, this information needs to go to the common people like me. So I'm articulate it in a way that my intelligence understands and use analogies. And it seems
that's how I found it easy to understand. I am not a scientist.
No, I'm not.
I'm an intellectual.
No, I'm not.
My education wasn't even past the 10th grade. I didn't go to even 10th grade. So I appreciate understanding these complex things, especially when you also explain, like when you use the description of how the strings are vibrating on it, making that resonance. It gave me a visual that I could really relate to, putting it towards what we were speaking about. So touching on the Egyptians, I would like to know about, how did the Egyptians communicate with the forces of nature, and what are communication codes?
Oh, well, I've only just released a documentary today, so I cannot go into detail too much. I haven't sent you the documentary. I've only released it on YouTube. It's just gone out. I mean, it was extremely complex because I can't articulate in scientific terminology. I can do it just from me, little old me, my expression of knowing. So that went out today. Now, ask me the question again.
So I'll leave it to, I can make it half the question. How did the Egyptians communicate with the forces of nature?
Okay. What I've spoke about today, self-awareness and everything I said, history is not what everyone thinks it is. We have beliefs about the Egyptians, which is incorrect. What I spoke about today, all from self-awareness, multidimensional, especially from the 18th dynasty, Akhenaten, they were fully aware of this. It's in the documentary. And just be cautious. They were fully aware, and they could communicate, they could create architectural structures, they could manipulate. They were doing what you call sound bathing. But at that point, it was the storyboard in the Divine Comedy for humanity. It was to be only limited, the priests to be aware of this. Okay. Akhenaten, I'm cutting this very short, but I want everyone to watch the documentary.
Yes.
Akhenaten did in Egyptian history, brought in the biggest shift they ever had from what was perceived from us. It didn't happen. From us, multiple gods, to the one God, monotheism, the one God, the sun God. But he used that as a symbol. It's all in the documentary. And from his era, this knowledge, what we think we've all just found out today in our generation, they had it. That's why we from here go, well, they couldn't be more intelligent than, yes, they had it. They had the sciences, they had or you can call it the mysteries. I don't know what I called the documentary. I don't know, something like that. So that's how they did that. They were aware of the resonance. They were aware of everything, just like millions of us now here in 2024 are aware the same. And what it does, in this documentary, I say, you know, like you have a film and you can have an alternative ending. In this documentary, I asked the viewer, can we have an alternative beginning? So forget everything you know about Egypt with fresh eyes, because it's not true. It's been hidden. It's not true. Now, Dr. Karim is oh my God, I can't remember his first name. Is a scientist. And way back, I remember hearing him, and it wasn't resonating with me at that. I wasn't ready at that point. But I took in what he was saying about how they worked with resonance, frequency, and how they symbolized it. And so the whole Egyptian language of hieroglyphs, we interpreted it from the ego mind's interpretation. Does that make sense? Whereas it was all in frequency vibrations, and they did not worship multiple gods. That's all. You got to watch the documentary. You're going to do it now. You're going to watch it, and then you'll be Gloria. So I hope that answers your question, Gail.
So that documentary is, what's the title of that? And is that on the?
It's called. Hold on, I can't.
You go to the YouTube.
Because I happen to be working on another one now. So just bear with me. Bear with me.
Okay, not a problem.
It is the Divine Comedy, Akhenaten, Alternative Beginning, the Egyptian Mysteries. And it is so complex. Even as I was creating it, I was going, no, what? I don't get what? What? No. I was aware that I was aware of a different story, but I have to keep giving what I get. It has to be done. And then when I had to listen to it. It's nearly an hour, 40 something, many times. And for myself, I had to keep listening. So I recommend you go back and listen again, because for my sake, I'm trying to explain something that is unexplainable in language that humanity today has lost. The Egyptians had this language, and they had a way with language which was symbology. They used symbology. We do sometimes still do it now, don't we? But that is how, and that contained, like what they had, the netters. It wasn't these gods doing what you thought they were doing. Someone today said to me, out of the blue, the Egyptians. Why did they carve Egyptians with animal heads? Were they half animal and half human? I said, no, the head is not representing what you think it is. It's to do with frequency, resonance, energy. It's a creative aspect, but that's all in the documentary. It's all
very interesting.
I can't remember half of it. It's all in the documentary.
Well, because also aren't there, I've been to Egypt and I've laid inside the king's chamber, inside the middle of the Pyramid of Giza. And I had a very amazing experience where I just opened my mouth because there was nobody there. We happened to get the room to ourselves at that moment. And sound just came out of me. And I'm not musical, or I can't have a note and tune, nothing. But when I got in that stone bed or whatever it was, all I could have was sound. I just had to let sound come out.
Absolutely.
And I'm all things that would have normally given me claustrophobia, going up a wood ladder inside the tiny, area inside the half darkness of a pyramid. None of it bothered me. I was like energized. It was like it's the
most beautiful, beautiful experience, and its resonance, its frequency. I have had an experience, not the way you have, in a contact experience in Egypt. I mean, when you're in this, it's like you're in a dream. It's not a dream, though. And I'm in Egypt. The dust, everything. And right in front of me is Akhenaten. It's like, it's amazing. So you don't have to explain how you felt. I would guess it straight away.
And isn't there a lot of things where people have said that there are things in the hieroglyphics or in the carvings or things that show that there were contacts with multidimensional beings? Isn't that part of the Egyptian? Isn't it in that history there, or am I just imagining? So we're winding down to the end of our show, and I would love if there was some more things that you have to add, or any points of wisdom, or anything to wrap up all the amazing things that you've shared with us today.
I've totally forgotten what we just said. It's just, you need to, as I said, that's why I didn't want to know the questions, because when I talk, it's in resonance with consciousness. Yeah. And I hear the question and then I tune in and then the answer comes. So you're going to have to ask me a question again. Sort of, if you can remember what it was.
Okay. We were winding our show down and we were talking about Egyptians' communications. We were talking about Dr. Corinne and the 3 energy balancing qualities identified by Dr. Corinne. And I'm not sure if we actually touched on those 3 energy balancing qualities.
Yeah, I would prefer, because you're obviously going to add a clip, that you insert that clip, because talking about the 3-in-1, we've all heard of the 3-in-1, and many stories about what the 3-in-1 is. It's very important that that clip of the documentary, if maybe you should show that one, to give you, with the visuals, a better comprehension of what I'm actually saying, because it is not an easy thing to articulate. So by having the visual, as I said to you before, the documentaries are like a visual audiobook. Okay, so you're getting the visuals to put what I'm saying into context. Like when we teach our children, that's how I learn. Because I'm an artist, I visual learn. I have read books when I went to university, and it was evil, I must tell you. But you give me a visual education, boy, I've got it, because I've got the visuals. That's how someone like myself that's creative works that way. So I suggest for that one, because I had to go into the area of, let's say, quantum physics. I'm not a physicist. I have studied and researched and have some awareness, but to articulate this off the cuff, and for someone, I've tried it and I get the blank face, especially for my children. What are you talking about? And I go, shh. So I would suggest you go to the you pick that clip, the one that caught your eye, and that hopefully, and then obviously if any of your viewers, after watching the documentaries, they can get in contact with me if they have any questions, and I would do my utmost to expand upon what I'm saying. But I recommend, even for the students I teach, they go back and watch it a few times. You can watch the Divine Comedy, the first 2, either in 4 documentaries. I have separated them on YouTube, like 1 to 17. They were separated at one point. So there are some separated that you can watch for 5 minutes, because I'm fully aware even my attention span is limited now. The older you get, I can't, I need, you know what I mean? And then you can contact me via Facebook, Gloria Canning, or Open Minds Podcast. Or if you can't find me, just get hold of Gail, contact Gail, message her, and she'll put you in contact with me. And if I can help you and expand from my perception, it's my perception, I'd be happy to do so.
Well, I want to thank you for offering that to our listeners, because there may be people out there that do have extra questions that they want to ask you. And also ones who might be dealing with an experience that, like myself, where they only had one particular experience, but they really never felt comfortable enough to share it. And you would be a perfect person for them to discuss that with.
Oh, they could discuss with me. And as I say, I do have this service. Anything that's discussed with me is in the utmost confidentiality. And I've mentioned on a couple of podcasts I was on recently, when I had this experience, I didn't know what they were. I'd just like to add this. And then in about 1986 or 89, I don't know when it was, Whitney Strieber brought out his book Communion. And when I saw the cover, that's when I first realized I had experienced what you call ET, and my world shattered, because I'd seen them all through my childhood, all up to the 80s, 90s, and I was unaware that's what they were. I thought they were part of the spirit world. But when I saw that, that was it. My whole world shattered at that point.
Can you repeat that book and author again?
Is it Whitley Strieber? The book Communion. It's an old book of his, and I never read it, but I didn't want to read it. He had a picture of what you call a grave with the big almond eyes on it, and it was synchronistic. I kept hearing people talk about it, and I was on the internet, and people going, "Oh, have you, read this book Communion?" And it was going on, and then I saw the face of the cover of the book, and I was literally like, my heart, everything just shattered, because I'd been experiencing it. And that's the first time I had the realization that I had been experiencing all my life multidimensional beings. So it was another reality shift as well. So that's why, if I can help anyone that's had an experience, and especially if there's some fear, like I did with you, I work with you to shift your perception. As Wayne Dyer said, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And it's about shifting your perception, the observer effect, because we have an experience, and because of our beliefs, ideas, our cultural influences, we judge it immediately, straight away, like we judge people. We're very good at misjudging people. So I work with that. Then you say, oh my God, there was nothing to fear. Oh, it's fine. Oh my God. It's as simple as that. And this is the work I seem to be doing since coming out of hospital, for my flatlining time, is to connect, to heal a mind trauma with an experience. Okay, it's to heal. It's not, the experience you had is not what you thought it was. Okay? And when you find out what it is, then that in itself expands your perception, your awareness, because you're looking at it from a different lens, slightly different. And then your reality outside, you shift again, changes around you, which has been happening with you, because you had a guest before me, then we spoke, and she come out for the first time, and then you had me, and then you mentioned it, and then I worked with you there and then. And then then you look what's been happening to you since.
Yes, that
you
was
dropped that fear.
Yes.
You see, because you dropped the fear. So how this play works, everything is in place to support you. The universe consciousness brings in the resources when and how you need it. You don't have to do anything. So you then drop that fear and, oh, and your reality since then, look what you've been doing. Look what you've been experiencing. It shifts. And there's your own autonomous, well, we're not autonomous, we're not separate from consciousness, but in the human experience, there's your evidential reaction that you are consciousness. You are from the one. It is all connected vibrationally, and you're never disconnected from it. The only thing that disconnects you from speaking to multidimensional beings or being in two places at one time, that's another story, is the ideas you have about yourself, your belief systems, your fears, what you think should happen in your life, as to why don't you just let you be life, let life flow through you. And when you allow life to flow through you, you experience things that you would call miracles. It's just mind-blowing, and it's only going to get better.
Well, thank you. That's a beautiful ending to a wonderful podcast today.
Thank you for having me again.
I'm so happy to have you from across the pond in London. And I want to thank all you listeners for joining us today.
Thank
I've had
you.
a wonderful time being with Gloria. And I will have all the information in the description for you to find out how to contact her. And I want you all to remember to share your stories because
Yes.
stories can heal. And we
Yes.
can see this from show after show by sharing intimate stories that people have.
Yeah.
So thank you again for being here with us
Thank you.
today.
I love you lots.
I love you back. And we'll see you again soon. And everyone, enjoy your week. And remember,
Bye,
have a
everybody.
very, very wonderful time.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.